Welcome to the podcast that does more than just discuss. Embodying Spirit unpacks key metaphysical and psycho-spiritual theories through heartful discussion and playful debate, and then gives you applications and exercises to bring these concepts into your own life. Isabel Almeida, wellbeing coach, and Tara Love, healing arts facilitator and ceremony guide, have been on the conscious healing train for 40 years between them, studying a range of modalities from yoga and somatic healing to community engagement and philosophy. As best friends, co-creators, dynamic mothers, and dreamers of a better way to live, they have been seeking to live in conscious community for a long time. This is a collection of the conversations around consciousness, connection, and community they've been having for many years. The duo draw on a vast range of theories and schools of thought, claiming the sacred feminine space of relationality between many influences from Hermeticism and Vedic scripture to quantum physics to shamanism and beyond. Also claiming their deeply intuitive inner knowing. They share these deep chats, ideas, and debates openly, bringing new embodied perspectives to ancient wisdom. Each episode begins with a discussion, leading into an immersive exercise and a guided meditation. They share these vital ideas and tools in practical and grounded ways to inspire waves of self-empowered awakening in the world at a time when we need it most. We really hope you enjoy. Hello, beautiful people.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to our first ever episode of our first ever season of Embodying Spirit. I'm very excited to finally realize this podcast. We're coming to you live from Cape Town, where I am based and where the beautiful Isabel is here visiting me. We thought it was a perfect opportunity to record our first episode. We've been conceptualizing this for a year or so. So it feels very magical to finally be here.
Exciting times.
Excited to start, and please forgive us for any little hiccups. And we're in a makeshift studio, so there may be a few outdoor noises that come in just to give you a bit of a soundscape for your journey here. So, without further ado, we get into our first episode, which is entitled Oneness, Separation and Polarity Myths. And I suppose it's good for us to start with why this is our first episode, as we've planned a whole season or 7. And to say that you don't need to listen to all of these episodes in order, but there is a flow and it does help. And a lot of the things that we talk about in this and the first few episodes are going to come up in future episodes. But I guess the reason why we decided to start with oneness is because it's really the central concept of our own understanding of the universe and of our spiritual framework that we're working with.
That we're all energetic beings having a physical experience as opposed to physical beings having an energetic experience.
Exactly. That we are all connected, that we are all energy, that we are all part of the same interconnected energy, and that is therefore the oneness, the whole. And I guess also that it makes sense at this point to kind of say, and that's our understanding of spirit as well, really, at its core. And that there isn't some, or in the way we understand it, and which aligns with many kind of ancient wisdom schools and religious or spiritual traditions, the understanding that God doesn't stand outside of us or above us in the sky, but that the concept of God or spirit, which we will use interchangeably through this podcast, is, I was about to say simply, but it's not really that simple, and that's why we have a whole episode on it, but is the totality of everything, of all, of the whole universe. And that's why universe, spirit, God can be used interchangeably in the way we understand it, because it is simply the everything, the oneness, the whole.
That everything is spirit in different manifestations, and that we each have our own awareness from where we are, but that actually it is all interconnected. It is all energy and it is all one. And that is a really difficult concept to sort of hold when we see from our eyes and understand from us. And that's why, I mean, obviously it comes up in many, different ideas and different ancient belief systems.
Yeah, I mean, most ancient belief systems center around animism, right? And that idea that everything has a spirit, everything is alive, the rocks are alive. And I guess there was less man-made stuff back then, but even one could say now that everything, the glass that we're drinking from, everything has some kind of spirit because everything is made from the same stuff. To put it really simply, that everything is made from the same particles, that everything is made from the same stardust that created the universe in the Big Bang, that everything that we are, everyone else is, and everything else is. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed. And so everything that we are has existed for millions of years. And everything that I am, you also are. And everything that the rock is, I also am. And so everything is connected. And this separate self that we've come into the universe as is both a real thing but also an illusion.
Yeah, and I mean that comes up quite a lot. I mean, you see, if you in meditation, for instance, we're able to, once you become adept at it and you're able to find the stillness within, it's like there's no boundaries as to where you start and to where everything else ends. It all becomes one, and you start to feel that oneness. And the same, we can see this, like, so for instance, when we had psychedelics, that was something that came up, that you can see the interconnected energy lines, and your experience of the universe becomes far more expansive
And connected. Yeah, it's like with meditation, which Isabel's much better at than me, by the way. But you start to become the observer of your thoughts, right? So often we just think, like Descartes taught us, I think, therefore I am. But actually, that's kind of the myth, because with the meditation, you start observing your thoughts, and then you're like, oh well, who's observing the thoughts? If I'm my thoughts, then who's that observer? And then you can observe that, and then you think, okay, well, who's observing that? And you go back further and further until you realize that you are that presence that is observing everything, that you are the whole ocean, really, observing the waves within it. So what is that? And that kind of higher consciousness, you might say, or that awareness is that feeling of oneness. So it's something we can touch, like you say, yeah, in meditation, in psychedelics. People experience it with near-death experiences too, and they see those interconnected lines. But on a day-to-day basis, we feel very separate because we're in this one body.
And we feel that we are our feelings and our thoughts, and we become so connected to our ideas that obviously, then that's where separate, what we see is what we take as reality. So I see you over there, I'm over here, and therefore it's very difficult for us to be able to observe the world as one. And the fact that, mind you, it does come up. We do know it to be true when we can understand things like telepathy, and where people are able to communicate. Like, for instance, if someone's staring at you, you can pick up on the fact that they're staring on you. So we do know, and we are aware of it. And we often say, like, oh, I felt their vibe. So we are aware of it. But still, it still feels a bit mystical when we start to speak of being oneness. It's a bit like,
And you think, well, if I'm here and you're there, then how are we all connected? Because what's all this space in between us? But obviously that's where science has really helped us. Well, it hindered us initially, and now it helped us. So we've been living in this Newtonian understanding of the world as everything as separate, as particles, as, everything is a separate unit that can be divided, can be measured, right? But then as they were kind of started to look closer and closer and closer and closer, and they kind of get in more and more and more, they realize, oh, hang on a minute, there's nothing actually dividing anything when we get down to it. There is no separation. Everything is just connected, and you can divide things up in order to measure them, but that's just a man-made thing. Actually, when we get really into it, everything is connected. And what's more, I mean, this is where the beauty of quantum physics has got us. But most of us, myself included, can't quite wrap our minds around the details of it. But there's some really interesting concepts. And what's interesting is that we're living in a world still where we're living through the understanding of Newtonian physics still, like this old kind of way of everything being divided, and what you see is material, and that's what it is. Like if you can't see it, then it's not real. That's kind of the understanding, right?
And it makes sense in some ways, because I think it was like Bohm, is it? That the complementarity theory, where it's that idea of, as we observe something, we affect what we observe. So of course, then when we have a belief, it's easy for us to believe what we believe, because it just becomes a whole truth within our own reality.
Yeah.
But
let's go into that. I don't know if it was Bohm or Bohr. Does it matter? Old dead white men. Doesn't really matter. Sorry to the ancestors of. But just that understanding, complementary. I mean, that's hard enough to say as it is. Complementarism. That it's and it's that concept of and both rather than. I mean, and rather than and or.
Yeah, that we are both. That is both the wave and the particle. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So when they observed this wave of light, they could have, or that when they observed light going through a hole, sounding so scientific here, they could have, if they wanted to, if they set up the experiment to observe it as a wave, it behaved like a wave. And if they set up the experiment to behave as a particle, it behaved as a particle. So the way you're observing something affects it, but it is both. Yeah, so it is both a wave and a particle. You can't observe both at the same time, but therefore everything is the way it's seen, right?
Yeah, and that's us. Like, we are both solid and vibration at the same time, and that's what it is, and that's what makes it so, because we see ourselves to be so solid. And that's why, going back to meditation, when when you're in that meditative state, actually you really start to feel that your vibration, that you become outside the solidness of yourself. And that's where you start to, then you hear about people levitating, and I mean, obviously I haven't had that experience myself
yet.
But that's the idea, that actually you can come to know yourself in this lifetime as that energetic form.
Yeah. And we're getting there, right? Because we talk about energy much more than we did when we were kids, like you said, like, feeling that vibe, what kind of energy have they got, so we are slowly catching up with the physics of it, right? Because that's the thing, like, just to flex our scientific muscles a little bit more, another like Einstein's relativity, right? That really shakes the understanding of time and space being these separate and standalone measurable things. But actually, saying if you're staying still and you're observing something, and if you're moving and observing the same thing, it happens at different times or in different speeds, right? So it's taking a different amount of time, fractional but different. So therefore, everything is relative to where you are. Everything is connected. The way that you are, like the speed at which you're going, or the time with which you're taking, is going to affect the space within which you're in, as it were. So everything is connected to everything else. There's no absolutes. There's only relativity, right?
Yeah. And then we know that in our own experience. For instance, like, if we're doing something that we find deadly boring, it takes forever. And we're like, oh my God, this hour feels like 5.
Yeah.
And then when we're in joy, it's like, there you go. It felt as if it was a minute, but it's the same hour.
Yes.
So we do experience this and know it to be true within ourselves.
Yes. But our rationalist scientific schooling that we've all, most of us have experienced, particularly in the West, would make us, like, put that down to a peculiarity. Do you know what I mean? Oh, that's just our mind playing tricks on us, or whatever, because time is the real thing, and that's the thing that we must stick by, because time is real. But actually what we're learning to realize is to trust our experience. And in fact, that's what the Buddhists said, right? Like, you can only know something through your experience of it. Let's not listen to these theories. And I mean, and bless them, they've done, it's not that they're wrong or bad, like, it's been this exploration of how, of like wanting to understand the world. And as we've said, quantum physics actually, in the early 1900s, as early as the early 1900s, started to disprove a lot of these scientific theories that we're still catching up with in our consciousness.
Yeah, and I think that the school system has really affected the way that we understand all this, because it's been so rigid and continues to be so rigid in what is like, it hasn't moved forward. So we're still getting the old system teaching, one of competition, one that we are separate, and that we have a survival mentality. and that's what we're doing out here. Even though we're understanding more that we're collaborative, and that actually probably goes back more than we've known that deeply, but because of the way that
Indigenous cultures still
know
practice that understanding
exactly.
and knowing, obviously, and that's what's beautiful about the world today, is that we are remembering that ancient wisdom, and hopefully before it's too late, because so many of the Indigenous cultures are being wiped out, but to be to know that deep connectedness which all of our ancestors and all of the Indigenous cultures still hold to. I mean, that's a whole other conversation as to what our schools are doing, and I don't know if that's for us to go into right now, but you're totally right that schooling of it has not helped us to be able to feel into that interconnectedness.
And if we see nothing as wrong as well, and we just see it as our journey, as as this God energy, spirit energy, this oneness, we have to become separate to know ourselves more. So then we understand that even though once upon a time we knew something, we maybe knew it more small in pockets. And so then we've become separate ideas everywhere, but so that we can all join into this oneness understanding where we can all unify in this idea that actually we are all part of the same, because, and therefore.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, totally. I mean, we have to go through the darkness to find the light, right? As well. It's like we have to go into dissonance to find greater clarity. I really like that, into greater cohesion. How can we become more cohesive within ourselves, within our knowing? By coming out of cohesion, by going into dissonance, by going into the not knowing, to be able to then find, which is actually a beautiful segue into something we really wanted to talk about, which is like these myths around, like, why do we have this sense of separation? Because if we are all one and we're all an interconnected energy and we're all part of spirit, why don't we just know that in ourselves? And we're not big ones for going, because the system broke us, and whatever, everything's going right, so we believe. But also there are these myths in various ancient spiritual understandings as well, which I just love. This idea that spirit, that the universe wanted to know itself more.
Yeah. And
right?
in order to know love, we have to have something to love as well. So that also makes sense that we would separate in order to be able to have these sensory experiences and really know ourselves within them as well.
Yes. And we will have another episode totally about love.
Of course.
Being Tara love. And that we are all love, really.
Yeah. We are made of love.
Yes.
And made in love, and the idea of love as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a moment to appreciate love. But we won't go into it too much, because otherwise we'll mess with our next episode. But where were we? Yes, that idea that in order to know yourself more, to be able to love, there has to be separation, because there has to be other, there has to be a sense. So I love this beautiful idea of like the universe, spirit, as this kind of big ball of energy, of knowing, right? And then it gets a bit bored of itself because it knows itself so much. And this is one of these ancient myths or stories, and in order to know itself more, it kind of takes parts of itself and throws them away, like into the darkness, away from itself. So it forgets itself, and it has to find itself, its way back to itself. I'm saying itself a lot, right? So it has to find its way back. And in having that sense of separation and coming back to itself, it discovers new things. And that it's almost like a game that the universe is playing with itself, that the spirit, God, whatever, is playing with itself in order to grow, in order to know itself more fully, and in order to become more connected to itself.
Yeah. And it's almost like that, like we're actors out here, like playing roles. And of course, if we knew we were, spirit in its form, we would never be able to small ourselves into these ideas, because it just wouldn't make any sense. So of course, we've had to forget ourselves so we can really play this role, and therefore have this journey of coming to know ourselves and discover more and come back together.
It's interesting, that theory of like the actors. All the world's a stage, right? Like that we are kind of, like, as parts of spirit, as playing our part of the universe, as playing our part of spirit,
Our
as
particles.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that we can then fully embody that part that we are, that we can explore what it is to be that part, and define ourselves in relationship to the other parts, and in doing so get to know ourselves more. Because I mean, and that's again another episode, but like they say that time and space, doesn't exist, but it exists here in the 3D realm as well, in order for us to have that experience as well. Because in that oneness, in that wholeness, in that all-knowing God state, actually there's nothing to be done.
Yeah, and that's why we can never truly become enlightened. I mean, we can have moments of enlightenment, and we see that when, you feel totally at one and like, oh my God, yes, love, it's all love and I am love. And
particularly in psychedelic experiences.
Yeah, and in meditation where you can have completely rise in, woohoo, and you can know yourself. But actually, you have to then come back into this reality of being separate, because we are housed in these 3D bodies, right? So it's
so it's funny when people talk about like, oh, I'm enlightened or an enlightened being, and actually it's just impossible, because if we were to really fully embody that concept, or not concept, but being of everything, then our minds would explode.
We just couldn't be this matter, as we couldn't pretend. It wouldn't be possible, and therefore I do think maybe at that point you just literally would have to leave in order to just leave this existence.
Exactly. So because as much as we all have the oneness within us, we are not it all in this material form. That's an interesting one that makes me think of the holographic theory as well, right? That it's like we are all spirit, and yet we can't be all of it all at once in this material, in this body.
That's right.
So the holographic experience is this understanding that because all of the universe is made from all of the same stuff, and nothing can be created or destroyed but only transformed, and a bit like how in every single cell of your body there is a DNA strand that contains all the information to create everything that is in your body. Every single part of you, every single part of the universe contains all the information of all of the universe within it.
Yeah.
And so technically you could take a cell of the body and create the entire universe from it, because all of that information will be in there. However, because we're sitting in this physical configuration of these cells, a bit like how your heart cell isn't going to become a liver cell, even though it has the information within it, and it can't be the whole body. You can't take a whole heart cell and actually allow it to be the whole body. Like, it's the same thing, right? Like that we are still having this separate experience. But technically within us is the entire knowing of the entire universe. And there are ways to access that information as well.
Yeah.
There are many ways to be able to, like you say, through meditation. We're going to talk a lot about meditation. We have a whole episode about meditation, and accessing, because everything is connected. And that's the beauty. And again, the paradox that it's very easy to feel this separation, to feel my skin, to feel me as separate, as different, as away from things around me, and yet knowing that everything is connected.
Yeah, and then there's also the theory that we came for this experience as well. Like, often we think that actually we're here just by chance, or we don't know, but actually we've come for this experience, and we've come in this body, in this lifetime, so that this is the perfect experience for us to expand further into that knowledge. That's actually what we're doing here as well. And I just remember, I tried to say, because it came to me before, I was thinking about Buddha. Like, when I said about like, you wouldn't be here. And actually that's what they say about Buddha, is that he was like meditating and into the oneness, and then he just disappeared, and he became more than the smallness of himself in this physical body. So, that's also, something to hold as well. And that makes that theory.
And at that point, you lose your physical form, becoming just at one with everything that is fully. Or death. Let's talk about that in another episode as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if we definitely have to have a death episode, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And to go back to that, talking about Buddha, let's also talk about the Hindus, like the idea of, they talk about it very clearly. I really like their understanding of it, that we are living in a world of what they call Maya, which is an illusion. They say everything that we see is an illusion. And that when you lift the veil of Maya, lift the veil of that illusion, that's when you find nirvana, which is heaven, which is bliss, which is which they call ananda. That's that sense, that state of oneness. And when they say, and I think, when I was younger and I heard that story and I thought, well, what do you mean it's an illusion? Like, this is a table, I can tap it, like, what is that? But what they mean is the illusion of separation. The illusion that things are separate, that they are different, that they're not all connected.
Yeah, and talking with Hindus again, that reminds me of the Kali Yugas. They talk about these different yugas, the different space of time that we have, that we're on this journey as this one energy in all these different forms. But and we're at the current stage now where we're not in full knowledge either. We haven't. So we're not here supposed to be. We're not out of alignment. We're not actually supposed to be in the awareness of oneness. We are actually going through the process, having come out of the Iron Age, the Dark Ages, into this more enlightened time of becoming to know, and we're now coming to know that we are more one, but we're still not in that knowing. So there's nothing going wrong. We're totally on point.
Yeah, like these different eras. And that also makes me think of, like, why if the universe was, going back to that myth, that's that of the universe, like throwing bits of itself out to find itself, like, why, if the universe, if spirit, if God is whole, is one, is totally kind of complete, what is there still to know? But it's that idea that things are always expanding and contracting. Things are always coming, as I said before, going into cohesion and into dissonance. And it's almost that pulse, that vibration that every cell has, because everything is a reflection of everything else. Like that kind of movement that the Big Bang has already shown us. I mean, science has proved it as well. Like everything was expanding and then it's going to contract. And that idea of going between phases, I think that's what the yugas also talk into, right?
Yeah. And it also made me think of like the sun, like, when you think of the sun and, the sun isn't just the sun, like a candle isn't just the light. It shines out throughout the whole of, it will light up a whole room. It will light up the whole world, so we can't just place it over there. And it's the same way I think of spirit. It's like, it's all part of, it's all part of the same. So it may have a source, a central point, but actually goes out and it touches it, and everything is part of that. Did that make sense? Yeah.
That everything, in terms of everything being connected, you mean?
Where does the sun start and the rays end?
Yes. Yes.
Where does spirit start and spirit end? Like, it's all interconnected.
Yeah. And I mean, a really simple way I also thought about it is like, in terms of even in this physical, yes, it feels like air, but air is also particles. They're all connected. They're all, or there's no nothingness. Everything is totally connected. Maybe there's a different density, maybe there's a different, but it's all within the field, as they would say in quantum physics, right? Everything is part of an interconnected field of different energy lines. Everything's part of an interconnected field of different vibrations.
Yeah, and which we feel all the time. So this isn't even something we have to intellectualize. I mean, I can think of when I met there was a guy that I liked, and I could just feel his energy as he walked past me. It felt so solid, right? So we all have these experiences. It's not actually something that we have to really go far. We know it in ourselves. It's just that we often get so like black and white and see things so rational, like like solid, like no. That's what I can see, and rather than really allowing ourselves to go a bit more into the feeling.
The feeling, which is what's been discouraged through the education system, to come back to that, to trust those feelings and those senses. But the more and more we allow ourselves to feel, the more and more we can feel our interconnectedness. I mean, even like, my daughter's now studying away from home, and I feel so deeply connected to her energetically. When she's not good, I don't feel good. Before I've spoken to her, like, I feel that connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can feel her pain. I can feel her not being good. And they say lots of times, when the phone rings, you know who it is before you see, or you even have been thinking about somebody, and then the phone will ring. Like, I had a crazy experience where, we're going to get X-rated now, where I was thinking about a guy who I hadn't spoken to for so long, and was actually having a little bit of a fantasy about him. I don't need to go into more details. And it had been like 4 years. And like that, he called. I mean, and then we put things down to coincidence now, oh, it's coincidental. Oh, but there's no, that's what they say. That's the quote, right? There's no such thing as coincidence.
Yeah,
it's all congruencies. It's all connected, interconnected energies.
Collaborating incidences as well. It's like, how do we see that as well? It's so interesting. But you reminded me as well of the 100 monkey effect.
100th monkey.
I cannot speak. And that's really makes the same point, which is where, there's a story of a monkey, and, they're like they don't want their dirty potatoes, so they start to wash their potatoes. And
I think some stories it's apples, some it's potatoes. I can't imagine a monkey eating a potato.
Maybe it was okay. Let's just make an apple for the sake of this then. But basically, anyways, so those are around start to copy the behavior, and when it gets to a critical number, I'd say probably 100, because in the title,
the name.
Yes. Then suddenly every monkey knows and
to do that, even though they've not seen another monkey do it. So the other side, so it's like on a different island, right? I think it was observed in an island somewhere.
Yes.
And then the neighboring island, even though they have no fucking contact, excuse my language, they are then washing their apples.
Yeah, it's totally, and totally energetic. And it's the same I remember with the deers, where like if you have 100 deers, when 49 of them look the other way, all 100 know to run. So it's like we're entwined. We know this as well. I mean, all of you probably know and have had experiences, just like Tara and I mentioned as well, about like heartfelt experience of knowing when maybe a friend or somebody's in pain, and you felt like, oh no, something's up, I can feel them, and then you felt the need to call them. Like, these are common.
Or even I've realized recently how energetically as well, I always thought there was something that was me, but I've realized more and more that the feelings I'm feeling when I'm in public spaces, for example, are not my feelings, but they're everyone else's feelings in the space, And then in terms of time, another interesting thing is I've noticed times of year suddenly have a certain energy around them. And that's an imprint in the field somehow around that kind of, that time of year. For example, around the time when my mum died. And now that time of year is really difficult. So there's an imprint somehow in the field. And I mean, and that's what, that's the complementarianism, but also the idea that everything is completely interconnected. And again, quantum physics, you can find way more articulate people talking about this, but has proved these things also, that things are connected with no separation of time. Like that you can have like there's no delay between things being affected as well. That it's not that there's time for it to travel, as it were. Like just that something can happen. It's the butterfly effect, right? Like that a butterfly flaps its wings and a tsunami happens the other side of the world. Everything is interconnected, and through space time as well. Yeah, I lost my train a little bit there, but I was. But there we go. Yeah, really, really, really beautiful to kind of really feel into it, because I think we spend so much time kind of going, oh yeah, but really everything's so solid and everything's so separate, and I'm on my own out here, and I've got to do this, and I've got to feel into that, and if I can't see it, then it's not real, and what have I achieved? And that actually, that understanding that also, because everything's so connected, how much control do you really have over what's happening to you? Because everything's connected. And that's not to say that we're advocating sitting back and doing nothing. Well, I think that's also a myth as well, that that's what you really desire to do, or to kind of throw everything to fate, everything to the wind, because there is, again, it's the yes and, rather than the, it's the and both, not the either or. because it's like, yes, everything is interconnected. Everything around you is affecting you. Things across the other side of the universe are affecting you. And at the same time, you have free will and volition. And again, I feel like we're getting into another episode right now. But it's just nice to sit with and to feel into that connectedness.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, that's the thing. It does make sense why we can get so caught up in our egos, why we get so caught up in our stories, because, that's when, we wake up and we're like, oh, no, I've got to do this and I've got to do that and I've got to, but that's why we're having this conversation, just so that you can really start to, just have the consideration and the thought from that perspective of, okay, well, how can I really interact with this if I see this as me, if I see other as me, if I see this situation as for me, as all, it was all part of what I've come for, and open up to that, rather than being so intellectual, maybe more heartful in it as well. And actually, when you're walking on the street, maybe actually rather than seeing others, seeing a soul, how would that then look,
And I think what's also interesting is to think about, like, because I think a lot of people get caught up when they start on the spiritual path of like, oh, well, we're all one, everything's connected, we're all one, like now we must all be the same. Like, also there's a kind of, myth that happens in there, that we must all then do the same thing, and we must all be in this particular state of oneness, and we must all also maybe try and escape our physical individuated form to become enlightened, quote unquote, and to become the one, oneness. And again, more about spiritual bypassing in another episode, but just to say that I think that is the game of the universe. I love to see things as games and play, because I think that really the universe is playful, and the most enlightened, quote unquote, beings are those that are playful and fun, and that it is this game of both of holding, again, the paradox, another one of my favorite words, going to hear it a lot, of holding both, of being able to really enjoy our individual expression of the divine, as we would say, to really enjoy this form that we've come in, this unique expression of the divine that holds all of the capacity of the divine within it, but can't possibly be all of the divine at once, as we've said, whilst also having that understanding that we are it all. And we're constantly kind of going to and fro. Again, the and both, not either or, right? Like, so we are in that knowing of being everything, and still in that joyful expression and exploration of our individual selves, right?
Yeah, because it is separation that brings us dis-ease, right? It is the idea that that we are not one, that we are separate. So that's why it makes sense that this knowing is what's going to bring us back into peace, and allow us to really follow our individual purposes out here as well, because we all have a purpose out here as well. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. We haven't come by mistake. This isn't like, oh my God, I shouldn't be this energy. No, you're a perfect mix of the right energy that needs to be here at this time. You have been chosen.
And we'll never be this mix and this exact representation, or this exact manifestation, of reality in this moment, in this way, in this time. Never again. I mean, it's funny we say never again, but time doesn't. Anyway, let's not get into the time thing too much. But again, it's the both.
Yeah.
Because your experience of it in this way, in this moment, will never again be.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Of anything, right? Even though you may be it infinitely as well, because we are it all. It makes me think of two beautiful images that really help me, that we've talked about a lot as well. But the Rumi quote, which I'm going to bastardize right now, sorry, but it's like, we are not we are not a drop in the ocean, but we are the ocean in a drop. And I think I got it right, actually. And I think that is just such a beautiful, beautiful image, because we are still a drop, right? But we have the whole ocean within us. And it feels both empowering and also real,
Yeah.
Because I think otherwise we can get too conceptual and out there. Yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No. That's what, I mean, I love to play with words, and you'll come to know this, but it's like spiritual, spirit, all. We're all spirit, right? It's like, it's all, there's nothing that isn't spirit. So that's why concepts of good or bad become like really something that we'll talk about along the way as well. That just...
But let's talk about that a little bit, right, as well, because I think that it wasn't our plan to maybe touch on it. But that idea, that with the separation, with that idea of us being separate, with and you could say we live in an age of ego as well right now, that again, the way that the school or the way that the patriarchal system, and by the way, that's not a diss on any kind of men, everyone's messed up by the patriarchal system, that we are all equally responsible for creating and upholding, and we can talk more into that another time, but just to say, that this system of ego, of separation, let's just say that, right? Let's just take it to that, let's not get too caught up in other things, where go on.
I was going to say, which had purpose, which is why it was needed, right? That's why nothing's gone wrong here. So even though we might be moving more into a matriarchal way, that's because this is the order of the time, because we needed to do what we needed to do,
we needed to separate.
We needed to have those ideas.
We needed to expand, to be able to contract back to the oneness, opening up into the many, to come back to the whole constantly. I'm doing a nice gesture here, like a kind of jellyfish going out and in, out and in. Do it with me. No,
and that's the thing often that we find even within our own lives, it's like to a certain point, and then at that point we need to then expand into something else. But it's not that was wrong. Like, I just want to make that very clear in this conversation.
Yes, no, totally. Me and Iz are all about nothing's wrong. Everything's a lesson, everything's divine. A gift. We've got a whole episode on everything being a gift coming up. But yes, that idea then led to really dualistic thinking, that separatedness. Because if I'm separate from other, then we can be different things. Then I can be good and you can be bad, or you can be good and I can be bad, or you can be wrong and I can be right, or something can be dark and something can be light, something can be godly and something can be of the devil, something, this kind of idea of separation and otherness. As I say, dualistic thinking. And this is, again, we'll touch on some of the different hermetic principles, which also govern a lot of our thought, and really are the major laws of the universe before anything. And this touches on the law of polarity, which is essentially that idea that, again, everything's interconnected and that there's no division between good and bad, that it's all part of a spectrum, right? Because if you think about it, if you think of it as a sliding spectrum or like a stick, right?
Even a wave.
Yeah, but let's say there's a stick, and like on the one end is good and on the other end is bad. Like, at what point on the stick does good become bad or bad become good, right? It's a sliding scale. And as we all know from different experiences, it's like, there's always those cases that, was that good with it, So really, it's all part of the same vibration of goodness, right? And different scales of goodness, which are all individual relations to yourself, as in, which is only because that law of complementarism, means that it depends where you're looking from as to what you're seeing as well. So my idea of good, and again, I'm going into another episode, I think, around this, but like my idea of good and your idea of good are different. But let's just stick to that stick, right? At what point does the good become bad and the bad become good? There's no defined point. Let's take a less loaded example of day and night, right? Can you really identify a moment that, that's when the day became the night? Of course not. We have dusk, we have sunset, we have dawn, we have the gloaming. I love that word, that light, and at what point in the gloaming is the night suddenly the day or the day suddenly the night? There's no real point. So there we see that it's all a kind of illusion of separation. And it's all just differences on a spectrum of the same thingness, if that makes sense, right? Am I explaining it?
Yeah, because it's that same thing. It's like, even on our own ideas change. Like, we might say one thing over here that we think is good, just to go back to that. Like, I can really say, I think this idea is like the blah, 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 and I'm against that. And then a few years later, something has come along and now I'm feeling different about that. So now that's good and that's bad. So it's,
even within ourselves.
Even within ourselves, we see that the contradiction and
completely, even one day to the next.
Yeah.
And again, definitely. I'm going to stop saying in another episode. But that's what I wanted to say. But so everything is relational. That's another one of these concepts as well, of relationality, right? That everything is in relation to everything else. There's no absolutes. There's no separation. Everything is connected to everything else. And once we start to really live and understand that through the law of polarity and other laws, that everything is connected, everything is relational, everything is complementary, everything is an echo of a larger or smaller version of itself, and that when I do something over here, it affects something over there, that we are all part of the same oneness, then really we can start to release those ideas of separation and otherness, and we believe come into a greater understanding of allness, of oneness, and of peace and relaxation. Because it's very sad feeling all separate and alone, and like everything's your responsibility as well.
Gosh, yeah, and all uptight, like you say. Like, we actually, relax means to what is it? Oh, something like something to do with the back. Anyways, but anyway, I can't remember quite actually what unfortunately, but to go back to a baby state, I suppose it's to go back to that state where you're just open. And that's really what we all want to do. We become so uptight in life because we believe we're the controller. Whereas when we're a baby, I think it just comes to us generally, right? And so that's really why it's so important just to let go of these ideas that we
and that state of hostility comes from that feeling of separation, right, as well, that there's something outside of us that is hostile, that we have to protect ourselves from, and that's a survival. And I know we're going to go into this more in terms of it's also to forgive ourselves that as well, because it's also the vibration we've come in, it's also what we're taught, it's also what our trauma patterns give us. So there's many reasons. So it's not like, for people to be like, oh, why don't I just feel the oneness? It's how we've been programmed, just feeling myself going off into
we could talk
we
forever.
create the world, but before we create the world creates us, which is a beautiful Gavamate quote. And but it's like, but really we could talk forever. Are we reaching our ending of time?
We are.
But I think we've got there, right? This understanding, and we've covered loads of stuff. And I know we've kind of meandered through many different areas. And if it all feels a bit overwhelming, don't worry, because as the first episode, I suppose it was always going to, and we are going to unpack a lot more of these concepts on a deeper level with each unfolding episode. But yeah, I guess just to start with this deep understanding of oneness, and that we are all one, that we are all connected. And it's not anymore just a matter of faith to believe in this, but that it is something that has been now proven across science. If you want to look up beautiful Barbara Ann Brennan, which was also written years ago, like in the 70s, I think, Healing Hands of Light. But in the beginning of that book, she talks about, and she was a NASA scientist who then became an energy healer, and the way that, that's how energy healing can also work, because we are all connected through the field, that's what I've also learned with my cranial sacral studies and this, and through the psychedelic work that I do as well. But this understanding that we are all connected, and that it is totally been proved years and years ago by science. So it's not some woo-woo thing. We are one. And when you allow yourself to sit in meditation, you can really come to that. So this is the end of our discussion part of the podcast, episode 1. I hope you've enjoyed it, and just stay tuned for part B of episode 1, where we're going to take you on a beautiful meditation to help you connect to that oneness, and a little exercise where Isabel's going to talk me through some stuff.
Great.
Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for part 2.
Thank you.
So welcome to the embodied part of our Embodying Spirit podcast, where we lead you in a little bit of practice. So I'm going to guide you in a short meditation, helping you to come into a greater sense of oneness and alignment with all. So just finding yourselves in a comfortable position. If you're driving right now, then I really advise you to stop the podcast and wait until you're in a place where you can find stillness. It's great to have a meditation space in your home or your house somewhere. But you can also find a bench somewhere, a park bench, if you're out and about, or somewhere that just feels calm, relaxed. And just finding some physical stillness and comfort. Find yourself in a sitting position. If you need to be on a chair because of support, then that's fine. Just ensure that your spine is straight, but without too much tension. Keeping everything soft, but tuning into the sense of this beautiful spine, reaching up from your base high into your head, off which everything else is hanging. Bringing your attention into your body, becoming aware of where your body is in contact with the floor or the chair that you're sitting on. Becoming aware of this connection between yourself and the floor. And just tuning in to those spaces and allowing yourself to just relax a little bit more into that connection. Allowing your energy to just merge and blend a little bit with the energy coming up to meet you. Becoming aware of your breath as it comes into this beautiful body. Allowing the breath to flow in and out of the nose without any effort or strain, just allowing the breath to lengthen slightly with each inhalation and exhalation. Allowing the breath to come into a softening belly, letting your tummy muscles relax as you inhale deeply to the belly, to the diaphragm as it lowers into the back. And on the exhalation, just letting everything release. As you inhale, becoming aware of all of the sensations within your body. Becoming aware of where there are sensations and where there are not sensations. Without judgment, without needing to change anything. Just bringing your focused attention to everything that is within you. As you inhale deeper, becoming more attuned to these sensations within you. The sensations in your feet and in your legs. The sensations in your base, in your bottom, in your hip. And the sensations in your trunk, in your torso. Sensations deep within your internal organs. aware of the sensations in your shoulders and in your back, the sensations in your arms and in your hands, the sensations in your fingers, becoming aware of the sensation in your heart, tuning in to these sensations, allowing your focused attention to breathe into them, allowing your breath to reach all of the places within you, becoming aware of the sensations in your neck and in your throat, becoming aware of the sensations in your head, the sensations behind your eyes and between your ears, becoming aware of the sensations in your head, your skin on your head, the follicles of your hair, becoming aware of the sensations in your face, your nose, your lips, your eyelids. With every inhalation, tuning in deeper to the sensations of your body. With the exhalation, finding a sense of relaxation within those sensations. Allowing your eyes to relax within your head. Allowing your eye line to rest gently at a point between the eyebrows. Without any strain. Allowing yourself to tune in to all these vibrations through your body. The vibrations deep within and the ones on the surface. Tuning in to the vibrations on your skin across your body. Tuning in to the vibrations on the hairs of your arms and legs. On the hairs of your face and head. Tuning in to the vibrations on the outer layers of you. Allowing yourself to tune in to those vibrations deeply. Feeling into the space between your skin, your hairs, and what is beyond. Feeling into the vibrations of the space beyond your skin. Allowing this sense of yourself this vibrating energy that you are, to extend beyond your physical form. As you hold the sensation of your whole vibrating form, with each inhalation, allowing the sense of yourself to grow just a little bit larger. Just a little bit wider. Just a little bit deeper. If you struggle to feel the vibrations beyond your body, allowing yourself in your mind's eye to see your body growing, to see the awareness of yourself beyond your physical form, allowing yourself to tune in to the space beyond. Seeing the energy, feeling the energy expanding beyond your physical form into the room around you. See, feeling the energy expanding behind you and in front of you, above you and below you, all around you, growing. Seeing yourself as a bubble of vibrating energy, allowing the vibration to grow, to fill the entire room. Allowing this vibration of energy that you are to grow, to fill the entire building or area that you are in. If at any point you lose the sense of the vibration, coming back to those physical vibrations within you, coming back to the vibration in your heart, allowing it to grow exponentially from there, out into the universe beyond, feeling the vibration expand to fill the whole of this country, deep into the earth beneath you and high up into the sky above you, out across oceans, out across valleys, up through mountains. With every inhalation, imagining the vibration getting larger, the bubble getting bigger, as you begin to encompass all with your vibration. As your bubble continues to expand, your vibration continues to grow. steadily, deeply connected to your heart, connected to your spine, connected to your breath. Breath is spirit. You are breath. You are vibration. You are all. Allowing the vibration to grow, to expand, to extend, to encompass this whole world, this whole planet, a vibrating egg of energy with you at the center. Allowing yourself to continue expanding, to encompass the stars, the planets, to continue expanding in vibration outwards, outwards, infinitely outwards, with your heart at the core of this vibration. Nothing is excluded from your bubble. Everything is within your vibration. Allowing yourself to vibrate in the whole, in the oneness. Gently bringing yourself back, slowly allowing your vibrating egg to shrink, breath by breath, back from the universe, back from the earth, back from the country, back into the room, back into your body, bringing it all with you within, holding this one vibration within you, bringing it back into your heart, feeling the vibration within you. holding it all within you. In to just flutter the eyes open gently. You may want to rub your hands together and cup the eyes first for an easier transition. Just bringing your hands down to your heart. As you allow your eyes to gently open. Be kind to yourself. Be careful with yourself. And know that whatever comes up for you, however easy or difficult you might have found the meditation, that it's all for you. And developing a daily practice, these meditations will only be able to stay within them more and more each time. Blessings on your day.
Welcome to the exercise part of the podcast. I'll be posing some questions for you to consider that are designed to enable you to come more into oneness, followed by a short coaching session with Tara, where we'll explore these questions together. You might want to pause the recording here and get a pen and paper so you can follow along, or you can simply meditate on the questions, whatever works best for you. Okay, so here they are. What do you reject in the world? What do you see as completely outside of yourself? What do you think of as outside of spirit? What if you were able to see as spirit? How would that change your perspective? How would it change the way you feel? You know, for me along this journey, I've come to see that everything is spirit, and that's the way that I like to see the world as. But there's moments when, I'm without, I can see myself rejecting myself, right? Like that's what sometimes I can see, that I'll be like, and actually I realize that I'm saying I'm not part of spirit. I'm not right in this moment. And that can be really difficult for me. And it's in the observation of that I realize that actually I'm doing that. And I know that that isn't true, that I'm able to find deeper relax, because then I'm like, well, if I'm part of spirit, then like, and this is all for me, and this is everything is going as it's supposed to be, then actually it makes me become way more relaxed and able to just expand. What about you, Tara? What do you reject as part of spirit?
Yeah, I mean, I really resonate with what you're saying about rejecting parts of myself, definitely. Like that separation of, or that bit of me is ugly, or that behavior I don't like, or and that's definitely something. So you coaching me into understanding that it's all spirit has really helped me to find greater cohesion in myself. But I'm also just thinking about how other people might respond to these questions. I really like them. It's a really good, what do I not see? And I suppose what came up for me immediately when you said it was like, well, what about like all the horrible things in the world? Like, because I think a lot of people have that sense of, oh, spirit is good and light and beautiful, and only that stuff is spirit, and that's obviously not, we've been saying everything is spirit, and then the oneness. And I know we're going to talk more into these kind of things in other episodes, but just like as an example, I might be like, oh, murderers or whatever, like are how can that be spirit? Like somebody brutally, like let's say even raping and killing somebody, do you know what I mean? Like how can that be part of spirit? And I don't identify with that, because as much as I might be angry or upset, or like I know that I would never do that, and that's just pure evil, and that how can evil be spirit?
And of course, it makes a lot of sense why we think like that as well, because, obviously it's not what we would want to see in the world. But then if we see spirit as neither bad or good, and just the whole of everything possible that could happen, and then that point that nothing sits outside that. And so we can see that actually, and if we feed more into who that individual is, and rather than making them outside spirit, we say that, maybe that there's somebody who's been affected by an event themselves, right? Which means that actually they're the byproduct of experiences that they've had. And therefore we would be like, oh, actually, if that was a baby, for instance, and imagine that that baby had gone through a traumatic experience and grew up feeling insecure and in pain, and it may want to then, as an adult, inflict hurt onto another. So then we'd say, actually, we wouldn't look at the baby and then say, oh no, we wouldn't hate on the baby and then say that the baby was evil. We would say, oh, that baby was mistreated, and then we would be able to understand the adult more that then went on to hurt another. So it's often a case of, oh, it's because we see things so separately, to feed back into our whole discussion, which is, and that we're able to then say, no, that must not be spirit. And, because we don't see this as whole, we're not seeing it as whole. And of course, that's the thing as well. I remember, in Hinduism, they have like where Arjuna says to Krishna, show me all of you. And Krishna says, do you want, I don't think you want to see it. And then he shows him all it. That is literally everything from good, bad, and in between. Because spirit isn't one thing. It is all of that. As we said, the light and the dark. And us being able to accept that it is everything. That's how we manage to accept ourselves, because all judgment is the judgment of self as well. So it's not an easy concept to understand when we're looking at things that are dark, that we consider that, oh no, I would never do that. But then it's also true that, like, they say like, oh no, I would say, oh no, I'd never murder anybody. But then, if you ask somebody who maybe somebody had really hurt their baby, like, and they might say, oh, I'd kill that person that did that. And you know, so.
And I guess it's that thing that we were talking about in terms of the sliding scale as well, right? Like that when we stop separating and making things like the duality thing, like it's not good or bad, black and white, like that it's all this sliding scale. So maybe it's true that you couldn't, like maybe in this lifetime, in this incarnation, in this way that you are, you're not going to go that final step to maybe inflicting that level of pain or hurt on somebody. But it's not such a far leap from how far you would go, maybe, because also everything is, it's all on that spectrum, as we said, with the law of polarity, right? It's all part of the same, like violence is a spectrum, for example, hurt is a spectrum. You know, it's not that you're violent or not violent, you know, or that you're hurt or not hurt. Everybody has trauma, everybody has anger, everybody has ways of expressing it, and so it's not so different from you, right? Like I guess that's kind of the understanding of it. Your Arjuna story makes me think also of this image that I received in a mushroom journey that I was that I often talk about, where it was like Mother Earth, and she had this big meat grinder, and she was grinding everything into it, and it was showing me like all the beauty of the world and all the ugliness of the world, and it was all coming in together. And out of the meat grinder at the bottom was this like beautiful fairy garden, like little gnomes, and it was super cute. But I just felt like that was this deep message of like, you can't have the good without the bad as well, like that it is all, like, and that we are so stuck on this separation and this division of seeing other, of seeing things outside of ourselves, and that actually it is all.
Yeah, and that's why it's also important to come back to yourself with these things, because sometimes we go all the way over there and we say, well, I can't accept that as spirit, but we're identifying with it from a very separate point of view. But when we look at ourselves and we say, oh, you know, what can't I accept as spirit? And we really feed into that, we generally manage to bridge the gap a lot easier, you know, because actually we might be in a situation where we're like, oh no, this is so painful for me. But then out of that comes such lightness. And then on the other side, we can say, oh, actually, this has expanded me in some way, you know. So, you know, and, you know, and that you might find that in your own life, if you can think of things that you, at times where, you know, actually it's been really challenging, and then you come out and you can actually really feel, you know, where actually that you're grateful for that now. I know in my own life, I've had many of those moments. So, so really it is inviting you to really sit with and ask yourself, you know, from different perspectives. So don't, because often we look at things from the same until we're ready to look at it from another, right? And maybe something's have to happen for that. But here you can actually say, okay, well, if it wasn't me, or, you know, if that, you know, how would I see this differently? And so
I think also, like, there's something beautiful about asking these questions, like, what do I see as separate from myself, both within self and then in the bigger picture, like in the world. And you know, you asked, how does it feel? And I notice that as we talk into sort of also these very extreme examples of people that maybe are committing heinous crimes, as we might say, but we start to see how, again, they're just on this spectrum of hurt and trauma, and they might be on quite a far end of the spectrum, but still it's all part of the same. That it allows me to find greater acceptance of myself as well, within my own, be like, oh yeah, actually, if I can find an understanding that they're also within spirit, that it's all part of, and it's not, and I think it's important for us to remind people that we're not condoning behavior, like, you know,
no,
you know, say, oh no, but it's just part of spirit. That's not the idea, right? Which is where, again, the paradox comes in, right? This kind of yes and both, you know. So we want to always be
mindful.
and looking to ascend and looking to align. And the truth of the matter is in that behavior doesn't come a sense of peace, and in that behavior comes the punishment is within the self as well, as in, like, you don't need to send people to hell, because the hell is on earth when we're feeling capable of doing those acts, then we're in such pain ourselves, right? So it's not that we're saying it's all okay. It's just that it's all part of this interconnected.
And it's also that thing, and it's also that thing of like, we desire to be forgiven. So therefore forgiveness is also a thing that we must find as well. And that's why the whole idea of understanding that we are spirit allows for us to understand that, actually we must give on to others as we want for ourselves as well, and feel, and be able to see beyond our smallness, to be able to really relax into the greatness as well. That is everything. And I mean, of course, we'll talk more about these things as we move on and on and on. And, because obviously we're just touching on them. But for now, it's just so that you can really just start to come more into the oneness of yourself. So, if it's some things are too big to ponder, start in things that are smaller, that may be more physical or what have you, ideas that may help you. Well, I hope that gave you something to think about.
Yes, I'm looking forward to, it's quite just a fun game to play, isn't it? Like, what do I see as separate from myself? Oh, okay. It's actually all part of me and I'm all part of it. It feels expansive.
It does. And maybe this is another little thing that you can do while you go out there today, is as you do look at other people, rather than seeing them as bodies, look at them as souls, and look at them as as part of you, as like an energetic, an energy and connected, and just see how that makes you interact. Does that change the way you interact, the way that you experience people, the way that maybe you're less judgmental because you're seeing yourself as the same?
Bringing down the walls of separation.
Great.
One look at a time. Thank you so much, Liz. I really appreciate this exercise. I'm looking forward to applying it going out today.
Great. It has been such a pleasure being here with you today.
Lots and lots of love, everybody, and see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Embodying Spirit with Tara Love and Isabel Almeida. This podcast is brought to you by Rewire Desire and the Conscious Connection community. Please see the links to our social media and websites in the show notes to connect more and access our other offerings. This podcast is brought to you free of charge to spread the love and light we all so deeply need in these times of transition. If you feel abundant, safe, and in a space to be able to give from, we would deeply appreciate your support to sustain this gift. Please follow the link below to make a donation. If you would like to connect deeper and would consider becoming a more active partner, then please reach out to us. We look forward to you tuning in again with us soon. Love always, Tara and Isabel.